Hey everyone. So today we're going to be talking about advancing staking accessibility and the evolution of the Lido node operator set as a part of that. So my name is Will Shannon. I'm a contributor to the node operator mechanisms workstream at Lido. For those that don't know, Lido is a liquid staking protocol on Ethereum with over 9.7 million ETH staked. It's a middleware that connects stakers with node operators, and it's fully governed on-chain by the Lido DAO. All right, next slide's going to annoy some of you. Lido today is already the most decentralized at-scale staking provider on Ethereum. And I think it's really important to differentiate here. When I say at scale, if you look at any of the top 10 staking protocols by the amount of stake that they have, I think it's very hard to argue this otherwise. By the way, I also think this was true last year, and I think it was true the year before. Now I'm going to talk to you about where we've come, where things are today, and then where it's going. Because I will be the first to admit that I'm not saying this to make the point that Lido by any means was perfect, especially from a validator and node operator perspective. Okay, so Lido in 2023, when we were here at the staking summit, basically in Istanbul last year, this is where we were, right? There was 29 curated node operators. These node operators were onboarded via periodic onboarding rounds. And this is really, when you think about Lido, traditionally what Lido was, these 29 node operators in the curated set. But last year in 2023, Lido already had better consensus layer client diversity than any other protocol on the network. It was contributing to the general decentralization of the CL. There was no country with more than 20% of validators, excluding Germany, and the US, by the way, was like 14%. Undoubtedly, Lido is the most transparent staking protocol on Ethereum. This is true across many, many different metrics that basically no other staking provider makes accessible by any means. So you can look at this with the Lido scorecard, which I really think is quite a cool thing. There's definitely some areas where contributors put this together and say, I think we're doing a really good job here. There's some areas where it's like, this is okay, but needs to improve. And this, I think, is differentiated. There's a bunch of areas on this scorecard, if you go to lido.fi, where it's like, actually, this is not great, and there needs to be significant improvement. And some of the things we're going to talk about today were definitely listed there. So last year, the staking router went live via Lido v2. It also added withdrawals. The staking router changed the protocol from a monolithic to modular architecture, right? And that was the first step. But was the Lido node operator set accessible even 8 months ago? No, and definitely not a year ago. But that started to change. So in Lido in 2023, again, there was only limited node operator onboarding rounds. There was only 29 node operators. And very, very importantly, right, there was no permissionless entry to the protocol, and there was 0 solo stakers. So from a node operator set perspective, there was a lot that needed to be improved. So the staking router was added, as I mentioned, in V2. That was quickly followed by a couple initiatives. So first, there was Hasu's proposed goose goals to the DAO. We'll just cover it quickly, but basically this is to attract the best validator set in the market with permissionless entry, performance effectiveness rating in the 80th percentile, and reaching 5,000 node operators in addition to a few other things. That was followed by 2 proposals. First, for the addition of the simple DBT module. Second, for the addition of the community staking module. All right. So simple DBT, and this is really my bread and butter, so I'm happy to talk about it. This was the second module that was added to the protocol, initially with a 0.5% share limit, but based on really, really strong early results, it was then increased to 4%. And I want to level set here, right? 4% of Lido, like how significant is that? It's equivalent to over 12,000 validators. It's over 1% of all Ethereum validators, and on top of that, it makes it one of the largest staking cohorts on Ethereum in general by itself. That's run by 82 clusters. But what's a cluster? Okay, so it utilizes distributed validator technology by Obol and SSV, which are the 2 leading DBT providers. The best way to think about DBT, I think, is basically think like a multi-sig, but for a validator. Normally, you have your execution layer client, your consensus layer, your validator client, you're connected at your home node, and you have your internet provider. But oh no, your internet goes out, right? You're in trouble a little bit. With DBT, it works in thresholds, and you can work in a group. So this could be a 3 out of 4, a 5 out of 7, a 7 out of 10, or larger. Within Lido, all of the clusters have 7 participants, and there's a 5-person threshold. That means that only 5 of the 7 need to stay online for the validator to perform. And this is really, really cool because it adds incredible benefits to resilience, to decentralization, and to key security if you use DKG, which if anyone tells you they have security benefits, ask if they're using DKG in this case. This is really powerful, right? Because before I talked about the one single EL or CL, now everyone can run a different execution layer. Everyone can have a different consensus layer. Everyone can be in a different country using different kinds of infrastructure. And all of a sudden, you have this really super-powered, resilient single validator. Now you make that 12,000 validators, and you've got like a super decentralized set of node operators. And those node operators don't all have to be professional. They can be solo stakers. They can be anyone. What was really cool, and a big part of the reason why this was increased to 4%, is because the simple DBT module has consistently outperformed 7 to 8, depending on the day, on 30-day performance of the top 10 staking protocols since its launch. Since its launch in February of this year, there's been over 239 net new individual node operators onboarded to Lido. And what I'm most excited about, right, is over 140 of those are solo and community stakers. On track to see over 300 this year. There's another cohort that's onboarding in the next few weeks. There'll be another 30 or 40. And then there's another final SSV cohort that'll be onboarded, and you can see anywhere to 70 plus. All right, this I'll just cover very quickly, but I think it's really cool. It's the Decentralized Validator Vault. It was launched by Mello, and this is a kind of interesting initiative where stakers can use this to deposit ETH. It gets staked with Lido, but that ETH is then targeted specifically to SimpleDBT and the community staking modules. So you're furthering the decentralization of the Lido protocol, supporting solo stakers and others that are using SimpleDBT or CSM, and in return, users get points from Obol, from SSV, and from Mello. So if you're not interested, if you haven't looked into this, we definitely pay attention, because I think Obol and SSV are going to be around for a very long time. All right, so SimpleDBT was a step, right? But it was not perfect by any means, and by no means is anyone declaring victory with SimpleDBT, or really anything that's at this point live on Lido. But it was a really good first step, right? But we're still missing permissionless entry. So where does that leave us? Enter the community staking module, which I'm very, very excited to talk about. So first off, this is the first permissionless module within Lido. It was launched 2 weeks ago. There is a very, very competitive bonding aspect here. So your first validator, once it's fully permissionless, it requires 2.4 ETH. Every validator after that first validator is 1.3 ETH. So talk about accessibility, right? You've gone from 32 ETH down to this really competitive 2.4 for the first, and 2.4 is basically more competitive than all of the other options in the market. This is making it possible for anyone in the world to run a validator simply. But not only that, it's incredibly capital efficient, because your bond is held in STETH, and that bond sits beside the 32 ETH that you then receive rewards for providing the service to the protocol for. On top of that, there's no secondary token collateral required, no LDO component, it's just STETH, ETH, etc. So the APR multiplier, if you add all that together, is 2.37 times. You multiply that times your staking rewards rate, and you can calculate that. As being part of the Lido node operator set, you also then have access to execution layer and consensus layer reward smoothing. You're part of the largest single validator set on Ethereum. And so your average rewards as a solo staker will be increased for that reason. Next, the biggest concern from my conversations with solo stakers is always what happens if I go offline for an hour or two? Am I going to lose rewards? Am I going to be slashed? You're definitely not going to be slashed. You might lose some rewards. It's not that consequential. But the really cool thing is here, because you're part of this large validator set, this performance threshold basically allows for you to be offline for multiple hours within a 28-day frame. And as long as you get your validator back online, it's like you were never offline at all from a rewards perspective. So this makes it really, really easy, right? We talk about accessibility. So the barriers to entry are low with this really competitive bond. But not only that, now you're up and running, and you don't need to be the best node operator. You just need to be good enough. You basically need to have the network average attestation performance rate minus 5%, which if you're below that in a 28-day period, it's pretty tough if you're paying attention. Next, I think CSM arguably has the best user experience for staking, right? This is really after years and years of research. Community staking didn't come out of nowhere for Lido. I've been a contributor for 2.5 years, and this was in the earliest conversations I had with other contributors. And on top of that, CSM's later to market to launch and has really been able to learn from all of the other options that are available in the market. Next, there's 6 easy integrations to use to get up and running. If you're not very technical, you can use Sterium or DAppNode or Sedge and all these other tools that are integrated with CSM to get started, really just using a graphical interface to have a validator up and running. It's really, really simple. So this has been live now for 2 weeks in early access, right? I made these slides 3 days ago, and this is completely outdated. So there's now over 180 node operators. There's over 1,200 active validators. Again, 2 weeks since launch, there's 1,200 validators running via Lido completely permissionlessly. The bonded tokens is over 1,300 now. And so there's this 1% initial share target, right? And so that means that up to 1% of Lido, which is 3,000 validators, can run through this. Now, this is subject to be increased, and the reason it started at 1% is because this is really a security measure, right? Lido is a large staking protocol, but very, very importantly, too, this early access, the goal is to onboard as many solo stakers and many community stakers as possible to use the module. So this gives some buffer to make sure that the module won't be filled up very quickly. There's 20,000 eligible addresses to participate in CSM. So if you haven't taken a look, I would highly encourage you to. This looks at things like the solo staking research has been done by StakeCat, by Rated. It looks at the Gnosis stakers list, et cetera, and a few other sources. So really good progress. But here's the thing. In just a few months, in Q1, anyone in the world, without ever having to speak to a human, can run validators via Lido completely permissionlessly. You can do this with best-in-class rewards. You can do this with very, very, very low barrier to entry from a bond perspective, from a setup perspective. I think it's really exciting. Okay, so there's a lot. And I just want to cover what the Lido node operator set looks like today. So in the curated set, which is what we talked about, there's initial 29 node operators. There's now 37. There was an onboarding round towards the mid-end of last year. So not as exciting. I know no one wants to hear about this. But the really cool part of that last onboarding round was actually that we onboarded the first large-scale node operators in Africa, the first large-scale node operators in South America, and we also increased the number of node operators in the Asia-Pacific, which if you look at network distribution is still quite underrepresented. Next, there's 239 independent node operators within the Simple DBT module, right? This is a module that did not exist at the beginning of this year. This is including solo stakers, community stakers, and that's going to end up over 300 by the end of this year. This next stat, I think, is really, really cool. I think it's one of the most underappreciated discussions when it comes to Ethereum staking, and especially about network decentralization. Why aren't we talking about the lack of net new stakers? The barriers to entry to become a mainnet validator are so high. Simple DBT this year has already brought at least 39 first-time mainnet node operators. That number will go up as more cohorts are onboarding. And these are people that hopefully will grow up within Simple DBT, they'll earn rewards, maybe they turn that into CSM, and then hopefully they go and they run a node completely outside of a liquid staking protocol to really, really benefit the network. Next, there's over 170 node operators in the community staking module. Again, 2 weeks since launch and still in an early access period. And then with summing all that up, from 0 to over 140 solo and community stakers already this year. 852% growth in the Lido node operator set from last year. I think it's a really, really huge accomplishment. I think it's also a great sign of what's to come, because this is not the goal. No one's declaring victory, right? Let's talk about the evolution of where we're going. So Lido is becoming, and I think has become now with the launch of CSM, the most accessible way for anyone to run an Ethereum mainnet validator. I talked about this goal of reaching 5,000 node operators. How do you get there? First, the launch and the continued growth of the community staking module. When this goes fully permissionless in Q1, again, anyone in the world can run a Lido validator with on Ethereum without having to interact with a single person. It's huge. Next, it's the continued growth of the Simple DBT operator set. Third is the potential for new modules. And so nothing to announce there right now, but you can think of DBT-powered modules that are really interesting that can be added to the protocol, potentially like other innovations that can be created that can slot in and also add new opportunities like this. And then fourth, and this is really just like early stage in discussion, has not gone to proposal, but there's initial ideas for something like a dedicated vault solution that could be integrated into the protocol. Think of this for like delegated staking or bring your own validator. Maybe you are a like large potential e-staker that wants to stake with a specific node operator. Potentially you could choose your own node operator within the Lido operator set, min test ETH against that position, and then have the flexibility to have your own operator set, but also get the benefits of STETH. So thank you all very much for the time, and we'll see you later.